This video is hard for me because it's not really how I would want to start out a discussion, but it's something that has been on my mind a lot over the last couple of years, especially now with the Rise of Skywalker almost on the way. It is crazy looking at the situation of the fandom. I remember first sitting in the theater watching The Last Jedi. I'd seen The Force Awakens and I wasn't thrilled by everything that happened, but I still enjoyed the movie for the most part, and it had a lot of potential for what was to come. The Last Jedi. Feedback, of course, was very mixed. I had some friends who really liked it. I had some that hated it, and personally, I was in an odd place myself because while I liked the visuals were amazing, there were some awesome sequences and scenes, I had a nagging feeling that something was wrong and things weren't adding up. Certain ways characters were acting, certain things that were being said, certain aspects of the story, and the more I thought about it, and the more problems I just kind of got. Of course, I was in that camp where I wasn't a huge fan of how Luke was portrayed or how really powerful Rey seemed to be without any training and all those kinds of little things. But it was kind of par for the course at this point. It was kind of like where do we go from here? And recently I saw an interesting video talking about the fandom and how there has been a level of harassment and hate when it comes to Star Wars. How we've become more divided than we ever have been in the past, and it did make me think because it's true. I mean, there's been other movies in the past, ones that were not necessarily well liked by the fans for various reasons, but we've never really fought like this, I guess, over whether or not a movie was good or bad and had such a huge backlash like we've seen. It could be partly due to the internet, but I don't think that's fair. I think there's something much larger going on here. And so that kind of made me really examine where the fan base is and what's really going on. After, of course, watching the movie, of course, there was applause at the end. It still got me to thinking, where does this movie leave the franchise and where do we go from here? It's interesting that one of the videos, someone brought up the aspect of criticism. And a lot of the fans of The Last Jedi are kind of in a position where they're upset because if they come to the defense of the movie, they generally get jumped by haters of the movie. And so it starts this war within the fan base. But it's interesting to note that actually goes both ways, because in times where I've leveled criticism towards valid plot points that were my issue in the movie, I will get attacked by fans. And it's interesting when I'm in circles where there's more fans than detractors, instead of even viewing the criticism as valid or even evaluating what I have issues with, they will jump to attack it and say, oh no, this was a great film, without almost like the emotional side of it as opposed to where the logic lies. And so it is very interesting. But one could argue that really this starts from the top. The second Disney and Rian Johnson dismissed valid criticism of his film using personal attacks, mudslinging, and name-calling, and then the fans of his film and the media and otherwise joined in on it, it really created this war in the fan base. Ironically, he has become a victim of what he himself flamed. This does contrast with the past. I mean, I would argue that unlike George Lucas with The Phantom Menace, Rian Johnson has brazenly never owned up to most, if any, of the criticism. And honestly, he doesn't need to, because he doesn't have to finish what he started with The Last Jedi. People who dislike The Last Jedi don't necessarily feel that they're owed a better movie. It's more largely evolves around the feeling that George Lucas and the characters and universe he created are owed better.
I said I wasn't going to do any more, and that's true, because I'm not going to do any more. But that doesn't mean I'm unwilling to turn it over to Kathy to do more. Mm-hmm. I have story treatments of 7, 8, and 9 and a bunch of other movies, and obviously we have hundreds of books and comics and everything you could possibly imagine. So, you know, I sort of moved that treasure trove of stories and various things to Kathy, and I have complete confidence that she's going to take them and make great movies.
It's almost akin to when somebody puts out a movie based on a book and they do stuff that just doesn't fit with how the author of the book that you like so much wrote it. When it doesn't jibe, fans of the book are upset. And in some ways, it's kind of a similar dynamic. I mean, even Lucas has this suggested as much that he's not happy with the way the course was going.
You can't. These are my kids. So
all those Star Wars films.
All the Star Wars films.
They were your kids.
Yeah, well, they are right. I loved them. I created them. I'm very intimately involved in them, and obviously to
and
sell
you
them
sold
off.
them.
I sold them to the white slavers that take these things and.
Okay, but having said all that and having talked to you.
After all, Kathleen Kennedy promised us all that universe, those characters, and everything else would be treated with the utmost care prior to the sale.
The main thing is to protect these characters, make sure that they still continue to live in the way that you created them, and that the universe of Star Wars continues to grow.
That's why I say
You serious?
when I see some of what the articles are put out, for example, articles saying that Empire also got mixed reviews. Even when Rian Johnson did that spin article to say that I was disappointed when I first saw Empire, but eventually it became my favorite, almost suggesting that the same thing will happen with The Last Jedi. But the truth is, even when I first saw Empire, without seeing The Return of the Jedi, I still thoroughly enjoyed Empire. I may have not loved that it was left on a cliffhanger, and then I would have to wait to find out what's going to happen next, but everything else was great. And in some ways, being left on that cliffhanger made it more impactful. So, here's the thing. What's more interesting, and I think what's really creating this dynamic, is you could argue that it's part of modern culture. What's fascinating to me is that this is something that I see in sports all the time. When someone fails to be as good as their predecessor, it seems the way of modern fans and media to believe that they have to tear down what came before in order to prop up their argument. For example, I see this happen all the time when it comes to the Jordan versus LeBron argument.
Great points as far LeBron is a better basketball player. And if we're going to look at all of history, one thing that Nick looks at, let's stop skipping certain things. Let's stop skipping when Michael walked away. Let's stop skipping the Orlando series. Let's stop skipping at the end in year 14 with the Wizards. Those are real. Man, people in the sports world, they've paved over the Michael Jordan road to make it smoother to fit their argument.
I went to his last game in Portland. He was terrific. But Michael was a beaten up, put on some weight, not a great defender, 41% shooter, and a fall-away jump shooter in year 14.
And here's the thing, like, people do these weird things, because I understand people watching, they're like, yeah, but Jordan was 41 in year 14. Hey, man, nobody made Jordan quit the sport twice. Nobody be like, oh, well, LeBron, of course he's going to have better numbers. He didn't go to college. Nobody made Michael go to college.
In spite of all the information and stats that would argue that Jordan is the GOAT, fans and or fanboys of LeBron find ways to skew information or attack Jordan's career and use that as a way of giving their opinion that LeBron is better, more credibility. It's tough because it's not that there aren't those who might feel that The Last Jedi is better than Empire, or that I have any disagreement that some may have liked The New Hope over the Empire way back when, or still do now. But it's frustrating that this sort of attack has migrated from sports to Star Wars. That the spin machine wheels of Disney and Rian Johnson's PR machine have to attack Empire as a way of propping up The Last Jedi. It's okay to like The Last Jedi, but it's also okay to admit that it's not in the ballpark as the Empire, and few movies are or will be. It's just as okay to admit that the Attack of the Clones and the Phantom Menace were quite universally considered worse than all the other Star Wars movies. Personally, I understood what people liked about the Phantom Menace. Darth Maul, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, the pod races, etc. But I don't remember having fans apologizing for the bad things in those movies either. Everyone generally admitted its faults and that it wasn't a great movie, but it was a great spectacle and maybe even a great concept. And we all together hoped for the future sequels to get better and to show us more of the things we loved. Then came Attack of the Clones. It's not a popular opinion, but I actually enjoyed the movie for the most part. I won't make excuses for some of the plot holes or the bad directing, acting, writing, or whatever that it suffered from in spots. I'd never in a million years tried to suggest that the mixed reception to that movie was akin to the reception or supposed mixed reception of Empire. I know better. Every movie will have its detractors. Some of my friends still prefer New Hope or Return of the Jedi over Empire. But I'm not going to pretend that the level of disappointment surrounding The Last Jedi parallels Empire's general reception any more than I'd suggest that my disappointment with Phantom Menace or people's disappointment with Attack of the Clones will eventually fade and elevate either of them to Empire-esque stature. It's these subtle digs at the original trilogy that the majority of the fan base that loved them growing up, much like how LeBron fans try to diminish or sidestep or downplay the greatness of Jordan's accomplishments to show their love for LeBron, those are the things that fuel this massive division and backlash. That's what's created this war. It's not because we desire a war. It's not because detractors from The Last Jedi didn't want to love the movie or even hate everything about it. But it's a war because those who hated or disliked the movie are trying to save what they loved. And like Rose Tico, sometimes drastic, aggressive, and violent means are necessary to shift someone's course, even if they wholeheartedly believe that they are going in the right direction and doing it for the right things. To say that we haven't had an effect on the direction of Star Wars is to turn a blind eye towards the course corrections that have already been made. Disney has been forced to change its tactics. Obi-Wan and The Mandalorian are now TV shows with showrunners that love Star Wars and are suddenly consulting George Lucas again instead of producing movies that are little more than casually constructed money grab side stories. More and more characters from the defunct EU are getting recanonized. J.J. Abrams was brought back to finish a story that he should have been tasked with doing from beginning to end, or not allowed to otherwise leave us with all those cliffhangers at the end of 7. Disney's also having to back off on their mudslinging at fans, and also back off on trying to snatch up or stop fan videos and movies, something that George Lucas always encouraged. In the end, after the destruction of the EU and then the arrival of The Last Jedi, many longtime fans saw the movie as an attempt to do exactly what it was talking about. Kill the past. Destroy it if you have to. Instead of getting to see a reunion of all our favorite characters together interacting for one last time before handing off the torch, we were treated to watching them die alone, one by one, and likely still will be with Episode 9. Lucas had taught us that the path to the dark side was the easy path, but growing strong in the light side took hard work, sacrifice, and a willingness to challenge those bigger and more powerful than ourselves. But then we were told that what Lucas taught us was wrong. Exceptional prowess in the Force is just an auto level up feature of the Force itself. And it's super easy for a random nobody to have it as long as they win the Force's sweepstakes. And the lessons didn't sit right. The message didn't sit right. And the response that Disney and Johnson attempted to suppress our voices and opinions created a rebellion. Because that's what Lucas taught us. And just like most citizens of the Empire were actually good people, but many still got caught in the crossfire, the same has happened in this war of the fandom time and time again. It's not good. It's not where anyone wanted the fandom to be. And it goes back to those famous words. The opposing ideology to the concept that the past needs to die in order for the future to be great, for us to move forward as a fan base. The one that many Last Jedi fans like. That's how we're going to win. Not fighting what we hate, but saving what we love. And sometimes saving what you love requires evaluation, confrontation, and the presentation of harsh realities. Sometimes you have to aggressively confront those that are on a course to destroy what you love. Even if that means taking them head on and leaving a mess of debris in the wake of all of it. Sometimes confrontation creates growth. And that's what perhaps the new Star Wars doesn't address and doesn't acknowledge. But I respect that some people like The Last Jedi for the right, good, and Star Wars reasons. Not because of political slant or agendas, but because of how they felt it adds to or improves the universe and character lore. And I have no qualms with those fans. We all have experienced good Star Wars, and we all have decided for ourselves what and where our bar is as far as what we will settle for and how much thought we expect a multi-billion-dollar empire like Disney to put into the lore, the characters, the universe, the Force, and the franchise moving forward. As Disney showed us, if we stand for nothing, they assume that they can sell us anything. And I'm not just talking about Star Wars. Just look at all the remakes they've done as of late. And as Lucas taught us with the prequels, it's okay to love a movie, but also expect more and be critical of it and use that pressure and criticism as a force for positive change. We're not fighting what we hate because We love Star Wars, but some of us are fighting to save what we loved about it. Since we don't all love the same thing, not everyone will have the same issues with The Last Jedi. In fact, for some, what we love is as safe as ever. And for those, The Last Jedi was perfect. But that doesn't make what we who didn't like The Last Jedi, what we love, any less Star Wars or any less worth fighting to save.
No, it's based on human behavior, human psychology, mythology, which is the sort of archaeology of human behavior and thinking. And since it has those motifs, it is very universal, and everybody can relate to it. It's about good and evil in us, as well as our institutions. So, and the idea that some of us think we're really great people, but in the real world we're not. We're terrible people.
Or you can make bad choices.
Well, you make bad choices, but you run your life in a very selfish way, and you think you're doing good when you're actually not. And at the same time, it's how do democracies turn back into dictatorships? Why do people who have the power to have the freedom turn it over to somebody who's going to take it all away from them? It's happened through history forever and ever, and all Star Wars is a way of updating that idea to say, watch out, because there are people out there who don't play by the rules, and if you're not careful, you're going to lose all your freedom. And at the same time, those people who may not play by the rules because they're selfish and greedy turn themselves into evil people who don't care about other people.
Whether it was from the moment that Kathleen Kennedy ordered 66 the EU, or the media onslaught orchestrated by Disney against the centers of The Last Jedi, that's where the fan base is in 2019. Rebels firing shots at stormtroopers and trying to recruit more to the rebellion, not because they hate them or even hate Disney. They're just desperately trying to save what they love, and when Star Wars switched hands from Lucas to Disney, it started feeling less like a republic that encouraged and supported its fan base in their opinions and fan projects, and more like an empire designed to control, oppress, and force feed them the message that they wanted. And just like the overarching story of Star Wars, not everyone who sides with the empire is bad or even wrong. There were plenty of citizens who saw nothing wrong with it and enjoyed a good life under it. There were others who sought to slowly change what they saw wrong with it in a gradual way. And then there were those who remembered what the Old Republic was and what it stood for. Those who remembered the promises that the Chancellor at the time had made before taking power. And they decided to hold those in power responsible. If Kathleen Kennedy and Rian Johnson didn't think that they should or would have to answer to the fans of Star Wars, then they don't understand anything about the lessons we have and continue to learn, and what George Lucas taught us oh so long ago in a galaxy far, far away.
I feel completely confident that Disney, will take good care of the franchise I've built. And Kathy and I have been working on future Star Wars films, and the main reason I brought Kathy on is rather than quit, I wanted to have it move forward, but I needed somebody I trusted who could take that franchise and make it work the way I intended it to. So once Kathy came on board, we started working with writers and started working on all the processes of doing the films. So we've got a plan for 7, 8, and 9, which is the end of the trilogy, and other films also. So we have a large group of ideas and characters and books and all kinds of things. We could go on making Star Wars for the next 100 years.